want to say to the people that are watching this live on the internet, good afternoon. And as always, I am glad to stand before you on the Lord's Sabbath day. You know, sisters and brothers, we have really been blessed because now I know how Solomon was and how he felt when the Lord had given him all his wisdom. Because of his wisdom, sisters and brothers, the book says people from every nation under the sun came to Jerusalem to hear Solomon's wisdom. And the wisdom was the Lord, sisters and brothers, and I can see it happening right now because the Lord has blessed us to hear from people from all over the world. Because people want to know the truth. People want to know how to save themselves. And contrary to a lot of my Hebrew brothers, all people want to be saved, and God said his house is going to be called a house of prayer to all people. So it's one of these things that we should focus on, is doing what the Lord chose us to do. Now today, we're going to deal with the title I have because, you know, everybody have a controversy of the law. The law is, and sometimes the law is no more. Sometimes they say the law is good. And a lot of this stuff we have with the law come directly from some of Paul's writings, sisters and brothers. But the Lord said, I'm God and I change not. So sometime for you to understand what law was done away with when Jesus died on the cross and what law was retained, sometime you have to put both laws on the table. Somebody keep telling you what an orange look like and somebody tell you what an apple look like, but you never seen neither, so you don't know how to formulate it in your mind. So somebody get an apple and orange and put it on the table and said, this is an apple and this is an orange. Now you can distinguish which is which. Well, we're going to do this the same thing with these laws. You got one, the royal law, sisters and brothers. Then you have the animal sacrifice, the law of animal sacrifice, which was added. And we're going to show you why. Because it is hard for people to distinguish this because people are taught that the Old Testament has been fulfilled and that the things in the Old Testament don't have any more meaning. So now you go in the New Testament, and without the backing of the Old Testament, you are in a state of continuous confusion. It's all that simple. That's what the world is right now, in confusion. Because they say you don't have to keep no law, but still you can't even run a school without a law. We can't run this congregation without a law. You can't even run a card game unless you have some laws on how you have to conduct this game. Every municipality have laws. Every country have laws. Whatever the society is, however primitive, they have laws. Now you're going to tell me that the God of this great universe don't have any laws? If you don't have no law, then you don't have any order. So we're going to look at this. This lesson is titled, The Law Compared to the Law. The Law Compared to the Law. We're going to start in Exodus 19th chapter, and we're going to take our time and get some understanding out of this, sisters and brothers. Because we're going to read this Bible. That's why it takes us some time. Our services are never real quick. You know why? Because we want you to read this and learn this for yourself because you have to deliver yourself. Your preacher can't deliver you. Nobody can. You, your mother can't deliver, your daughter, your spouse. Only you can deliver yourself. We're going to start this in Exodus the 19th chapter. This is when the Lord had gotten Israel out of the house of bondage. 19, and we start at verse 1. Okay, read it.
In the third month, when the children of Israel were gone forth out of the land of Egypt, the same day came they into the wilderness of Sinai.
Go ahead.
For they were departed from Rephidim and were come to the desert of Sinai, and had pitched in the wilderness, and there Israel camped before the mount.
So now once they came out, 3 months later, they camped before Mount Sinai. So the Lord was going to weigh in on them now. Go ahead and read.
And Moses went up unto God, and the Lord called unto him out of the mountain, saying, Thus shalt thou say to the house of Jacob, and tell the children of Israel.
Now, a lot of people read this. I'm going to show you how the Lord talks, sisters and brothers, so you can understand. Now, house of Jacob and the children of Israel are the same people. It's not two sets of people, but if you didn't know better, he said, he spoke to the house of Jacob and the children of Israel. It's just like Job said, as long as my breath is in me and the Spirit of God is in my nostrils. He's just saying the same thing, as long as I'm breathing. Don't have no little person that live in his nose. Just letting you know how the Lord talked. So once you understand how the Lord talked and in his trend, then his words start to really unfold to you. So I want you to say to Jacob and the house of Israel, which is the same people. Go ahead and read.
4. Ye have seen what I did unto the Egyptians, and how I bare you on eagle's wings and brought you unto myself.
Go ahead.
Now, therefore, if ye will obey my voice indeed.
Now, therefore, if you will obey my voice indeed. Go ahead.
And keep my covenant.
Go ahead.
Then ye shall be a peculiar treasure unto me above all people, for all the earth is mine.
Now, the Lord said that about Israel, sisters and brothers. But we are not interested in that right now. We are interested in what the Lord wants us to know. He said, but still, if you obey my voice, you have to obey, sisters and brothers. You cannot serve God and don't do what he said. Skip down to verse 8. Verse 8, and go ahead.
And all the people answered together and said, all that the Lord has spoken, we will do. And Moses returned the words of the people unto the Lord.
So when the Lord told them to obey his voice, all of Israel said, all that the Lord say, we will do. So when they told Moses that, Moses was the messenger. He went back to the Lord. Go ahead and read.
And the Lord said unto Moses, Lo, I come unto thee in a thick cloud, that the people may hear when I speak with thee.
Go ahead.
And believe thee forever. And Moses told the words of the people unto the Lord.
Now the Lord knew that he had to give some evidence that he was dealing with Moses. He said, so I'm going to come in a thick cloud. I'm going to speak with you that the people will believe you forever. But now we don't have the thick cloud, but we have to deal with the writings that Moses and the prophets and the apostles left. But go ahead and read.
And the Lord said unto Moses, Go unto the people and sanctify them today and tomorrow.
Go ahead.
And let them wash their clothes. And be ready against the third day.
Go ahead.
For the third day the Lord will come down in the sight of all the people upon Mount Sinai.
He said, I want you to go sanctify the people. Because on the third day, I'm going to come down in the sight of all the people on Mount Sinai. The Lord let them know I'm coming down. Because the message that he was going to bring, sisters and brothers, was so important that he brought it himself. So what did Moses do? Skip down to verse 17. Verse 17, and go ahead.
And Moses brought forth the people out of the camp to meet with God. And they stood at the neither part of the mount.
So they came to meet with God, didn't they?
Right.
If this is what the book said, and I believe that. I don't put no spin on the Bible. They came to meet with God. I heard a brother tell me, well, you see, it wasn't really God. I said, well, what was it then? Please tell me. Go ahead and read.
18. And Mount Sinai was altogether a smoke, because the Lord descended upon it in fire.
Go ahead.
And the smoke thereof ascended as the smoke of a furnace.
Go ahead.
And the whole mount quaked greatly. And when the voice of the trumpet sounded long and waxed louder and louder, Moses spake, and God answered him by a voice.
So the people heard the Lord. See, people don't understand when the Lord comes, there's always his announcement with trumpets. Like when he when he get ready to come in the future, which is very near, he gonna have 7 angels with 7 trumpets. Because these trumpets are announcing the coming of the Lord and a few other things too, which we'll talk about in another lesson. But he talked, and once the trumpet got loud, Moses spoke, and the Lord answered him by voice. Everybody heard the voice of the Lord. Go ahead and read.
And the Lord came down upon Mount Sinai on the top of the mount.
Go ahead.
And the Lord called Moses up to the top of the mount, and Moses went up.
So now he called Moses, and Moses went up. Now the Lord gave one message. We're not going to read it all, but we're going to just show you what he gave man mouth to mouth is the 10 Commandments. All of Israel heard this. But people say, well, sometime, brother, Israel heard it, but we didn't. But Israel are the chosen priests of God. We could have read this in this same chapter. But I choose not because I don't want to go someplace else with this. So let's go in the 20th chapter of Exodus, and we're going to start it out. So the Lord going to introduce himself, and then you can read the rest of these commandments on your own. 20 and 1. Go ahead and read.
And God spake all these words, saying, I am the Lord thy God.
Go ahead.
Which have brought thee out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of bondage.
Go ahead.
Thou shalt have no other gods before me.
And I mean, he mean that, sisters and brothers. I brought you out of Egypt. Nobody else, and thou shalt have no other God before me. And he proceeded to give his 10 commandments. But once he got through with his 10 commandments, Israel couldn't take much more. Skip down to verse 18. Verse 18, because you can read the commandments on your own. I have a lot of things to show you today, and we don't need to read all the commandments when you can read them on your own. Verse 18, go ahead.
And all the people saw the thunderings and the lightning and the noise of the trumpet.
Go ahead.
And the mountain smoking. And when the people saw it, they removed and stood afar off.
You notice one thing they didn't see? They didn't see God. Because he told you, he spoke to you out of the fire and smoke, that you wouldn't run off and make no similitude of anything. Because he don't want no statues of man, beast, or anything. Like you got that picture on the wall, this is Jesus. God don't want that. You got a lot of little statues out there with women and men with their head. He don't want that. People have snakes. They have cows. He don't want that. He don't even want an image of him. That's why he spoke to you all. So what did the people saw? They saw the fire and the smoke, didn't they? Go ahead and read.
And they said unto Moses, Speak thou with us, and we will hear. But let not God speak with us, lest we die.
They got scared. We don't want to talk to God no more. I guess that had to be a terrible sight, sisters and brothers. Even Moses said he's exceedingly quick. He said, so now I want you to speak to God for us. We'll hear you. Go ahead and read.
And Moses said unto the people, Fear not, for God is come to prove you, and that his fear may be before your faces, that ye sin not.
Now, this is what people don't understand. Everybody says, see, I don't want to serve no God that I don't fear. I'm going to tell you something I learned, sister and brother, over the years. Anytime man don't fear something, he don't obey it. I have loved the law. I love my parents. But when I wanted to do something, as soon as they wasn't watching me, I did exactly what they didn't want me to do. But I've had people that I feared. I never did what they didn't want me to do because I didn't want to deal with the consequences. But the people are taking the consequences out of the Word of God. He said, the Lord came and he did this so you would fear him. That's what he wants you to do. And if you feared him, then you would not sin. Go ahead and read.
21. And the people stood afar off, and Moses drew near unto the thick darkness where God was. Now
Moses went on up because the Lord had something for him. Now let's go into Exodus, the 24th chapter. We're going to run it down. Exodus chapter 24. Because the people told Moses, we don't want to talk to God no more. Whatever God tell you, Moses, we'll do. They even told God, all that you said, we will do. People say that all the time. They get on their knees and they be doing some praying. Lord, I'm going to do this here. As soon as they get off their knees, they're up in trouble. We're going to read one verse. Because he told Moses to come up and he had a reason for him to come up. Verse 12, 24 and 12. Go ahead and read.
And the Lord said unto Moses, Come up to me into the mount, and be there, and I will give thee tables of stone.
Go ahead.
And a law, and commandments which I have written, that thou mayest teach them.
Now look what he said. Now think about what he's saying now. Come up here, Moses. I'm going to give you a law. I'm going to give you tables of stone with commandments written on them, that thou might teach what is written. This is important to God. He told him to come up. I'm going to give you these stones. Now let's go into Exodus, the 32nd chapter. 32. See, sometimes a fuss has to be made over this law, sisters and brothers, because people take it too easy. 32 and 1. Now God up there writing commandments on a stone. And look what Israel. Now Moses was up there for 40 days and 40 nights. So let's look what Israel did. We're going to start at verse 1, 32 and 1. Go ahead and read.
And when the people saw that Moses delayed to come down out of the mount, the people gathered themselves together unto Aaron.
Go ahead.
And said unto him, Up, make us gods which shall go before us. For as for this Moses, the man that brought us up out of the land of Egypt, we wot not what is become of him.
Then people ask me, how is that we so crazy? I said, go back and look at your forefathers. They're going to tell them, look here, come make us some gods for this Moses. Like he's some stranger that's happened to come through. We don't know what to happen to. This Moses is what the Lord used to bring 10 fatal plagues on Egypt, including killing the firstborn. This Moses is the one that the Lord used to split the Red Sea. This Moses is the one that the Lord used to get water out of the rock. This Moses? Go ahead and read.
Right. And Aaron said unto them, Break off the golden earrings which are in the ears of your wives, of your sons, and of your daughters, and bring them unto me.
Ain't that something? And instead of him saying, y'all talking crazy, break your earrings off. Go ahead and read.
And all the people break off the golden earrings which were in their ears, and brought them unto Aaron.
Go ahead.
And he received them at their hand and fashioned it with a graving tool.
Go ahead.
After he had made it a molten calf. And they said, These be thy gods, O Israel, which brought thee up out of the land of Egypt.
Now, look at this now. That's why I see all these weird doctrines and strange doctrines nowadays, and people believe them. If you believe that this calf that you saw Aaron fashion out of the earring that you took out of your ear brought you out of Egypt, something is severely wrong with you. Now that's what I tell people. Where is your reason? These be your gods, O Israel, that brought you out. Wait a minute, my God was in my ear. And he wasn't talking to me. What I'm saying is, sisters and brothers, look at this, then you can understand why people believe all these various doctrines. Skip down to verse 7. Verse 7 and go ahead.
And the Lord said unto Moses, Go, get thee down, for thy people, which thou broughtest out of the land of Egypt, have corrupted themselves.
He didn't even want to own them no more. Moses up there going through all this change for 40 days, getting laws, and Israel down there corrupting themselves. And the Lord saw. He said, look here, Moses. See them people that you brought out of Egypt? Your people. They done corrupted themselves. We're not going to deal with Moses with the argument because they told him, I tell you, stand on the side now, Moses, I'm going to kill them all. And Moses talked him out of it. But then Moses went on down. Skip down to verse 15. Verse 15, and go ahead.
And Moses turned and went down from the mount.
Go ahead.
And the 2 tables of the testimony were in his hand. The tables were written on both their sides.
Go ahead.
On the one side, and on the other were they written. And the tables were the work of God. And the writing was the writing of God. Graven upon the tables.
Now, people tell you that God is not a vain God. Ain't that what you hear? Why then would he write some laws with his own finger in stone if he wanted to terminate him when he came in the flesh? He went through all that trouble. Now let's see what happened when Moses came down. Skip down to verse 19. Verse 19 and go ahead.
And it came to pass as soon as he came nigh unto the camp that he saw the calf.
Go ahead.
And the dancing. And Moses' anger waxed hot.
Go ahead.
And he cast the tables out of his hands and brake them beneath the mount.
Moses got so mad until he just threw the stones out of his hand and broke them. Well, but nowadays, men of God can't get mad. They're supposed to be my daughter, my son. The Lord love everybody. You don't know nothing about the prophets and apostles of God, sisters and brothers. They would stone you to death. They would hack you to pieces. Moses, he broke the commandment, went out there and got that calf, grounded it to powder, put it in the water, made the people drink the water, and then he said, who is on the Lord's side? Then the Levites came and they got the sword and killed about 3,000 of them. Why would God allow that to happen? If he wasn't mad anyway. God was going to kill them all. He was going to save him one male. That's all he had to save was one male to keep his covenant that he made with Abraham. Get over there, Moses. I'm going to kill all these people like I would one man. Moses talked him out of it. So now, once he broke the commandments, should have been the end of it, right? Well, let's go into Deuteronomy, the 10th chapter. Deuteronomy chapter 10. Go start reading at verse 1. Deuteronomy 10 and 1. See, that's what I tell people all the time before you throw away God's law. I don't care who wrote it. You should go and see how important it was to him. This is the whole thing. You see a guy kill you over his car. Last thing you want to do is go out there and put a mark on it. So we're going to look at this big fuss. Let's start at verse 1. Deuteronomy 10 and 1. Go ahead.
At that time the Lord said unto me, hew thee 2 tables of stone like unto the first. Now once he broke them, he told me, look, I want you to go and cut me out 2, just like the same one that you had. Go ahead. And come up unto me into the mount, and make thee an ark of wood. Go ahead. And I will write on the tables the words that were in the first tables. And I will write on the table the word that was in the first table. Which thou breakest, and thou shalt put them in the ark. I ain't going to write a new message. I'm going to write the same words on the same type table that you bring up. And I want you to make me an ark out of wood, because I'm going to put these tables in them. Go ahead and read. And I made an ark of shittim wood, and hewed 2 tables of stone like unto the first. Go ahead. And went up into the mount, having the 2 tables in mine hand. Go ahead. And he wrote on the tables according to the first writing. The 10 commandments. Go ahead. Which the Lord spake unto you in the mount out of the midst of the fire in the day of the assembly. And he wrote unto me on the table of stone, the same stone that he wrote the first message, the 10 commandments, which he spoke to you in person from the mountain. This is important to him. Finish that. And the Lord gave them unto me. And he gave them to me. Just think about it. And people say, oh, we don't have to keep them old laws. No. But look at the fuss that God's making over these laws, sisters and brothers. Skip down to verse 12. Verse 12, go ahead. And now, Israel, what doth the Lord thy God require of thee? Now he's making a statement. What does the Lord thy God require of thee? Tell him. Go ahead. But to fear the Lord thy God, to walk in all his ways. Go ahead. And to love him. And to serve the Lord thy God with all thy heart. Go ahead. And with all thy soul. Go ahead. To keep the commandments of the Lord. And his statutes which I command thee this day for thy good. You notice he didn't say nothing about killing no cow, or no sheep, or no ox. So what is it that he requires of you? For love him, walk in his statutes, and keep his commandments. He didn't say, and then kill me 15 sheep in one go. Keep my commandments. Skip down to verse 16, because we're going to clear up something here. People always tell me, see, we don't have to, about the circumcision. Well, we don't have to have the circumcision no more. Now it's the spiritual circumcision of the mind. I still think he said something that Moses didn't say. Read verse 16. Verse 16, read it. Circumcise, therefore, the foreskin of your heart. Circumcise, therefore, the foreskin of your heart. And be no more stiff-necked. And don't be no more hard-headed. So when somebody tell you don't have to do the circumcision nowadays, all you need is the circumcision of the heart or the mind,
Moses told you that at first. You know what it means, circumcise the foreskin of your heart? Stop being stupid and do what I tell you to do. That's what he's saying. But if you don't have no understanding, people can tell you anything and you'll walk with it. That's why I tell people, look, when you leave here, you don't say, well, you know, Brother Bush said this. No, you read this. So now we're going to go into Galatians, the 3rd chapter, and it's going to look like Paul directly contradicted all that the Lord has done here. He spoke the 10 Commandments from the Mount Sinai. He wrote them on stones. Moses broke them. And he wrote them again. Now here comes the Apostle Paul, going to tell all that God has done. Look, sister and brother, even if it looked like it, I have to take a look at that with the eye of suspect. I say either Paul is wrong or something that Paul is saying that we don't understand. Well, we're going to get some understanding out of it today. Because Galatians, the 3rd chapter, is the exact chapter that people go to try and destroy the Lord's royal law, his commandments. And I'm going to show you why. We're going to start at verse 1. Galatians 3:1. Okay, go ahead.
O foolish Galatians, who hath bewitched you that ye should not obey the truth, before whose eyes Jesus Christ hath been evidently set forth, crucified among you.
He called them Galatians. Who is that that decided you, that persuaded you not to hear the truth? And you don't listen to this truth, it's just like Jesus has been re-crucified in your mind. Look what he says now. Go ahead and read.
This only would I learn of you. Receive ye the Spirit by the works of the law or by the hearing of faith?
Bam, that's it. Paul just terminated the law that God went through all that trouble with. When you read this, this is what you think. Receive you the law. Receive you the truth by the hearing of the law of faith. Right away, if you didn't know better, the law ain't no more. Skip down to verse 6. He's going to lay some more on it. Verse 6, go ahead.
Even as Abraham believed God, and it was accounted to him for righteousness. Know ye therefore that they which are of faith, the same are the children of Abraham.
So just like Abraham believed God now, nobody ever asked the question, what is it about that God did that he believed? What did God say that he believed? You know what faith is? Belief. That's all it is. Like people say, when the book read, Paul write, when faith came, I'm looking at the door. I'm waiting for faith to walk in the door with some suitcases in his hand and put them on the floor and say, I'm faith and I'm here. It's simply saying when you started to believe, sisters and brothers. So he said, now, all those that believe, that have faith, are the children of Abraham. But go ahead and read.
And the scripture, foreseeing that God would justify the heathen through faith, preached before the gospel unto Abraham, saying,
go ahead.
In thee shall all nations be blessed.
And he did that, sisters and brothers, because when Abraham got ready to sacrifice Isaac, God stopped him. He said, because you have obeyed my voice, in thee and in thy seed shall all the nations of the earth be blessed. Now we're going to find out who this seed is. Skip down to verse 11 and go ahead.
But that no man is justified by the law in the sight of God. It is evident, for the just shall live by faith.
So now, nobody is justified by the law. But the just shall live by faith. I keep asking the question, in what? Nobody asked that question. So what we're going to do then, we're going to go down and we're going to look at Abraham, this covenant that Abraham made. Because if you can have the faith of Abraham, look like you don't have to keep the commandments. Don't that look like what we're doing here? Said the law, right? Skip down to verse 15. We're going to pursue Abraham a little bit. Go ahead and read.
Brethren, I speak after the manner of men, though it be but a man's covenant, yet if it be confirmed, no man disannulleth or addeth thereto. Now,
Paul just told you something right there. Nobody paid no attention. Paul got to the point, he said, you ain't got to keep the circumcision, but the covenant was the circumcision was a part of the covenant. So if the covenant is made, can't nobody annul it, neither can you add to. So whichever way it was written, that's the way you have to ride with it. Ain't that correct?
Right.
Go ahead and read.
Now to Abraham and his seed were the promises made. He saith not, and the seeds as of many,
go ahead,
but as of one.
And that's what he's talking about. That seed is who? Go ahead and read.
And to thy seed which is Christ.
And to thy seed which is Christ. Because it was in Jesus, he said all the families of the earth are going to be blessed. But go ahead and read. Let's look at this law now. Go ahead.
And this I say, that the covenant that was confirmed before of God in Christ, the law, which was 430 years after,
which came 430 years later, go ahead and read,
cannot disannul, that it should make the promise of non-effect.
So this law, which came 430 years later, cannot annul the covenant and the promises God made with Abraham. But whatever this law is, it have a time that it started, didn't it? 430 years later. So let's see if we can find that time. Let's go, but keep your marker here in Galatians. We're going to come back. Let's go into Exodus, the 12th chapter. Exodus chapter 12. Because this is where you find out about stuff, sisters and brothers. You can believe and believe and believe, but your salvation is going to depend on what you know. It's all that simple. Like I said, when I was younger in high school, I was bad. I'm telling you, I was real bad. People feared me. I believed that I could whoop the whole school until the fight was over. Then I knew I couldn't. Next time, if it had come up on me, I would have ran. Or what I say, I would have made a strategic retreat. That's what knowledge do for you. Make you do the right moves. Exodus 12, this is when the Lord instituted the Passover. And once he got through the Passover, he killed the firstborn in all of the families of Egypt. That's why they let Israel go. We're going to start at verse 29. Verse 29. 12 and 29. Go ahead.
And it came to pass that at midnight the Lord smote all the firstborn in the land of Egypt.
Go ahead.
From the firstborn of Pharaoh that sat on his throne unto the firstborn of the captive that was in the dungeon, and all the firstborn of cattle.
Go ahead.
And Pharaoh rose up in the night, he and all his servants and all the Egyptians. And there was a great cry in Egypt.
Go ahead.
For there was not a house where there was not one dead.
Because every house had somebody that had to be born first, didn't it?
Right.
So he killed somebody in every household, including Pharaoh. Go ahead and read.
And he called for Moses and Aaron by night and said, Rise up and get you forth from among my people.
Go ahead.
Both ye and the children of Israel, and go, serve the Lord as ye have said.
See, the Lord know how to get your attention. He sent Moses saying, let my people go. Pharaoh changed his mind. Let my people go. Pharaoh changed his mind. When he went in there and killed all the firstborn, Pharaoh's mind wasn't changing no more. Get out of here. Go ahead and read.
Also take your flocks and your herds, as ye have said, and be gone.
Go ahead.
And bless me also.
Oh, he had been convinced that Moses' God was God, wasn't he?
Right.
Go ahead and read.
And the Egyptians were urging upon the people that they might send them out of the land in haste, but they said, we be all dead men.
So the Egyptians said, we want all of you going. That's why I know when the Lord recover Israel, it ain't going to be no little handful of people in Jerusalem. He's going to recover every one of us. I don't care if you're across the field, behind the woods, in a ditch, under a rock. He's going to pick it up and say, come on. Because he told you he's not going to leave one. Just like down in Egypt, didn't leave one of us, and I do mean us. But skip down to verse 40, and let's see what happened. Go ahead and read.
Now the sojourning of the children of Israel who dwelt in Egypt was 430 years.
Oh, so they had been down there for 430 years. Go ahead and read.
And it came to pass at the end of the 430 years, even the selfsame day it came to pass, that all the hosts of the Lord went out from the land of Egypt.
Oh, so they was down there for 430 years. And after that time was expired, the Lord brought them out of Egypt. So now I know what time that this law was instituted. When Israel came out of Egypt and went into the wilderness. Let's go back to Galatians now. I told you to stay there. The 3rd chapter. So this law then couldn't have been the raw law. You know why? It's because the wages of sin is death. Adam and Eve sinned. First thing the Lord did was kill some animals to make them skins a coat. Then eventually the Lord passed death upon man. Most people don't know that death wasn't a part of the creation in Adam's creation. It was added. He said, the day that you eat of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, that's the day you're going to die. What if you had never eaten of it? Would you have died? See, this is what people, you take too many things for granted. A lot of things you bring to yourself, but you're looking outside, blaming everybody else. So now, we know that when Israel went down into Egypt, when Jacob and the 70 that had come out of his loins went down into Egypt, they had no such thing as a sacrificial law. But the commandment's been around all the time. Sin is the transgression of the law. The Lord says Satan sinned. They did it. I can show you. He got kicked out of heaven, and that was really before man was put on this earth. That's why the Lord told the man, stay away from it. But now Galatians, the 3rd chapter, and where do we leave off at? At verse 17, so we're going to start at verse 18. Galatians 3 and verse 18. Go ahead and read it.
For if the inheritance be of the law, it is no more a promise. But God gave it to Abraham by promise.
So if the inheritance be according to the law, then it ain't no promise, but God gave it to Israel by promise. So this is the important place to read right here. Pay attention to this 19th verse. Go ahead and read.
Wherefore then serveth the law?
Why then serve the law?
It was added because of transgression.
It was added because of transgression. See, we got to do some learning here. Finish that verse.
To the seed should come to whom the promise was made.
Go ahead.
And it was ordained by angels in the hand of a mediator.
So now, this law was added because of transgression, wasn't it? Ain't this what the book said?
Right.
What is transgression? The other word for transgression is sin, ain't it? And if you're going to sin, you have to sin against something. So let's go and find out how that happened. Let's go into 1 John, the 3rd chapter. It's really strange sometimes how people paying attention to stuff. Like you have something in the 3rd chapter or the 4th chapter, and then he had an answer to it in another book in the same chapter. I said, boy, God's hand is guiding this whole thing. I pay a little attention to all that little stuff. Because it's the little things that save you, sisters and brothers. 1 John, chapter 3. 1 John, chapter 3. And we're going to read one verse. 1 John, chapter 3, and one verse. Some people going to find out right now for the first time in their life what sin is. Read it.
Whosoever committed sin.
Whosoever committed sin.
Transgresses also the law.
Transgresses or breaketh also the law. But go ahead.
For sin is the transgression of the law.
For sin is the transgression of the law. Now, if sin is the transgression of the law, then how can you add the law because of sin? We got some problem here, don't we? That old saying for people that don't have no understanding, say, well, we don't know which comes first, the chicken or the egg. But when you have some understanding, you know the chicken came because it said every seed after its own kind. That's something that people make without thinking. So now, if sin is the transgression of the law, how can a law be added because of sin? Let's confirm it. I can tell you, but I want to read it anyway. Let's go to Romans, the 5th chapter. Because this is what we want to, sisters and brothers, anybody that's come here, they're going to learn how to save themselves. Whether you want to, what you do with it is on you. Like people say, well, brother, you shouldn't make no, and look here, I'm going to tell you something. I teach the law. I don't enforce it. Unless it get crazy and start to pollute this congregation, then I will enforce it. You know, like throw you out of here. So I don't want you to miss it. Because that's why I had to make sure you understand that. Because the Lord said, let the wheat grow with the tares. he'll separate them at the harvest. But sometimes the tare is so foul until he starts pulling up wheat. Romans 5, we're going to start at verse 12. Let's pay attention to it now. 5 and 12. Okay, go ahead.
Wherefore, as by one man sin entered into the world.
Now, this is what I want people to understand. It didn't say about one woman and one man. One man sin into the world. Because people always want to throw Eve under the bus. But God gave Adam the power of attorney. He could reverse anything that she had. That's why he said one man and not one woman. That's why I tell brothers all the time. Well, you know, the woman made me do. If she made you do it, then you weak, brother. It's all that simple. You don't worry about what a woman's doing. You just make sure you know what you're doing. Woman can't commit adultery with somebody that don't commit it with her. You the man. You're supposed to have the strength. That's why I said, by one man, sin entered into the world. Go ahead and read.
And death by sin.
And death by sin.
And so death passed upon all men, for that all have sinned.
So now everybody has sinned, so death has passed on all men. Everybody's dying. Go ahead and read.
For until the law, sin was in the world.
But until the law, sin was in the world. Go ahead and read.
But sin is not imputed when there is no law.
But sin is not imputed when there is no law. You understand what you're reading, sisters and brothers? Until the law came along, sin was already here. But sin is not imputed when there is no law. Got a red light up there. Every time you run the red light, cops sit there and he give you a ticket. Then they come and they take the red light down. Then you can keep driving and don't stop. Boom, 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 boom. Why won't he give you a ticket? He did that last year when the red light there because somebody removed this law. The red light, the law said when the light is red, you stop. When it's green, you go. And when it's red, if you run it, you get a ticket. Somebody can come and take the red light down and ain't nothing there. You just keep driving. Boom, boom. Cop just sit there. Boy, this used to be a good source of revenue. Can't collect it now. You know why? Because there ain't no law. And where there is no law, sin is not imputed. Y'all understand this thing, sisters and brothers? So in order for that law that Paul is talking about in Galatians, the 3rd chapter, to be added, it could not have possibly been the 10 Commandments. That was the law of animal sacrifice, sisters and brothers. Because the Lord had to do something. Because if he didn't do something, he would have killed the whole creation. But he didn't ask you for that. Let me show you. Let's go into Jeremiah the 7th chapter. Jeremiah chapter 7. But don't nobody teach. They do sound bites. They give you what they feel. And you go to church and you dine on polluted bread. Then you leave all exuberant, feeling good, endowed with the Holy Ghost, and you don't have enough to get you across the street, let alone God's kingdom. Because the Lord said he's going to judge you according to your works out of the thing that's written in the book. So if you don't know what's written in the book, how can you obey him? He's going to open his book up on you, and you got you a problem. Jeremiah 7 and verse 21. Look what the Lord said to Israel. 7 and 21. Okay, go ahead.
Thus saith the Lord of hosts.
Go ahead.
The God of Israel. Put your burnt offerings unto your sacrifices and eat flesh.
What you do is you want to kill something? Cook it. I didn't ask you for this. Go ahead and read.
For I spake not unto your fathers, nor commanded them in the day that I brought them out of the land of Egypt.
Go ahead.
Concerning burnt offerings or sacrifices.
Didn't we read that? The Lord said, look, this, and Moses had said, look, so here, O Israel, is what the Lord require of you. obey his statutes and laws and keep his commandments. He didn't mention killing one animal.
Right.
He said, so when I brought you out of Egypt, I didn't even mention animal sacrifice. What did he say he did? Go ahead and read.
But this thing commanded I them, saying, obey my voice, and I will be your God, and ye shall be my people. You
don't have to talk like God now. Just read. He's getting long. Obey. Let's don't get sidetracked here. He's getting worse than Julius. Let's take my lessons away from it. He said, this is what I require of you, that you obey my voice and keep my statutes. Go ahead and read.
And walk ye in all the ways that I have commanded you.
He said, now that's what I asked you. We read that, didn't we? Go ahead and read.
That it may be well unto you. But they hearkened not, nor inclined their ear, but walked in the counsels and in the imagination of their evil heart, and went backward and not forward.
So now what do? They didn't listen to God. They started to obey themselves. They started to come up with their own laws, like when they made that calf and said, these be your gods, O Israel, that brought you out of Egypt. Don't make no sense, but they believed in it. He said, I didn't ask you for animal sacrifice. I didn't ask you to kill nothing out of your flock. I said, this is what I require of you, that you obey my voice and keep my commandments. That's all that simple. Now, if you believe God, if you had faith in God, and he said it'll be well with you, then you would have obeyed his voice and kept his commandments. That's where faith comes from. In order to have faith, you have to have something to have faith in. But being that people don't know what simple words like faith mean, like merely belief, they think faith is some big holy thing. Like they think sanctification is something holy. It means set apart. Every month, if you smart, before you start go out and party and buy what you want, you set aside your bill money that you need. You just sanctified it. That is the simplicity of Christ, sisters and brothers. Simplicity. But we done got away from simplicity. We done blown everything out of proportion. So now, being that man couldn't obey, God had to institute something else, animal sacrifice, to keep from killing man. That's the law that was added. Because the Lord wanted to live among Israel, and he told them to make me a tabernacle. But that tabernacle became a source of animal sacrifice. The veil in it. Why? Because man sinned. He just wanted to live among these people. Let's go and look at it. Let's go into Exodus, the 25th chapter. Exodus chapter 25. See, people make too much out of little things and don't make enough out of big things. People don't listen. First thing, he said, hey, look here, man, I sanctified $200 yesterday. Oh, brother, what you do? You pray over it? No, I didn't pray over it. I just set it aside because I didn't want to spend that. That is simplicity. Simplicity, simplicity. Lord wants to make this thing easy so that you would save yourself. Because it is the Lord's wishes that all men would come to repentance. You understand? He don't want to lose nobody. We are his creation. We are his children. Like you have children, do you want to lose any of your children? You want to save them all. So it is with God. But now God wants to live among his people that he brought out of Egypt. And it got so raunchy, he had to remove this, but then that's another lesson. Verse 1, 25 and 1. Go ahead.
And the Lord spake unto Moses, saying, Speak unto the children of Israel, that they bring me an offering of every man that giveth it willingly with his heart. Ye shall take my offering.
Now look, he wanted everybody to bring him an offering, and they would give him. See, the Lord always left it to this man to take care of his business. You understand? I'm offering you immortality. I'm offering you a chance to become what I am, God. But you got to do a little work, and you got to give up a little something every now and then. In other words, if you want to get here, you got to do what I tell you. So he said, I want to make me let me show you what he's going to do with this offering. Skip down to verse 8. verse 8, and go ahead.
And let them make me a sanctuary, that I may dwell among them.
And let them make me a sanctuary that I might dwell among them. See, the Lord ain't going to dwell in filth. So he said, hey, this is my people. I brought them out. I sanitized and they clean. I'm going to live right smack dab in the middle. Don't you know what Jesus is going to do that first before the Father's kingdom come down from New Jerusalem? He wanted to do it then. Go ahead.
According to all that I show thee, after the pattern of the tabernacle and the pattern of all the instruments thereof, even so shall ye make it.
So the Lord has always been a straight-up dictator. I want you to do what I want you to do the way I want you to do it. Now, they did it. Let's look at some of it. Let's go into Exodus the 26th chapter. Exodus the 26th chapter. And start at verse 1. Go ahead.
Moreover, thou shalt make the tabernacle with 10 curtains of fine twined linen, and blue, and purple, and scarlet, with cherubims of cunning work shalt thou make them. See, the Lord always used the cherubim angels because those are the ones that he put around him in the Garden of Eden when man messed up. That's the only stature he allowed, but then you know what they was and what they stood for, and that they stood between you and immortality. Go ahead and read. Skip down to verse, where are we at? I'm getting hung up in my own lesson. Skip down to verse 30 and go ahead. Verse 30 and go ahead. And thou shalt rear up the tabernacle according to the fashion thereof, which was showed thee in the mount.
I want you to raise it up just like I told you when you was up there in the mount. See, it didn't take him 40 days to get 10 commandments. He told him a whole lot of other stuff there.
Right.
But the most important, to let you know that it is not going to change, he wrote the commandments in stone. Go ahead and read.
And thou shalt make a veil of blue and purple and scarlet, and fine twined linen of cunning work, with cherubim shall it be made.
Go ahead.
And thou shalt hang it upon 4 pillars of shittim wood, overlaid with gold.
Go ahead.
Their hooks shall be of gold upon the 4 sockets of silver.
So now what you're going to do is you're going to make them a veil. And you're going to make them hooks to hang it on. Go ahead and read.
And thou shalt hang up the veil under the taches, and thou makest bring in thither within the veil the ark of the testimony. And the veil shall be divided unto you between the holy place and the most holy.
Now picture it in your mind. You got a great big old tent. You got a veil sitting in the middle of it. Behind the veil, which is called the most holy place, you have the Ark of the Covenant, you have the mercy seat where the Lord sat on. And in front of the veil is called the holy place. You were supposed to come in and talk to the Lord through this veil. And the Lord will give you answer. Like when Moses went in before animal sacrifice started, he said he heard the voice of God talking to him from between the cherubs above the mercy seat. But he didn't go in with no blood then, because the Lord hadn't instituted the sin offering yet. But then, this same veil that he set up became the source of sin offering. Did you finish that?
No.
Go ahead and read.
And thou shalt put the mercy seat upon the ark of the testimony in the most holy place.
And that's where the Lord is supposed to sit. But being that this man, now he got a place now he's going to set him a priesthood. Because the priesthood had to be set up later to administer this law that was added. Now look at Exodus the 28th chapter. We walking you right through this thing, sister and brother. I'm walking you right through it so you can see it with your own eyes. Exodus 28 and verse 1. 28 and 1. Go ahead and read.
And take thee unto thee Aaron, thy brother, and his sons with him, from among the children of Israel.
Go ahead.
That they may minister unto me in the priest's office, even Aaron, Nadab, and Abihu, Eleazar and Ithamar, Aaron's sons.
Now he said, I want you to take these guys that they might minister unto me. But later on, when man sinned, it got so bad in the camp that Moses had to get the tabernacle and set it way away from the camp. But still, anybody that wanted to see God, they could go out to the camp. But eventually, man got so bad until God had to start collecting some death. In order to keep from killing man, he instituted animal sacrifice. Now let's see, instead of you going and just confessing and talking to the Lord before the veil, now it's something else you got to do before the veil. Now let's go into Leviticus, the 4th chapter, and see what that is. And all this is important, sisters and brothers, because when we start looking at things that's going to happen in the New Testament, it'll all make sense. But if you don't have no Old Testament background, no foundation, nothing makes sense. You be talking crazy. Well, you know, my mother's in heaven looking down. Well, I'm going to see her at Judgment Day. Old Rotten Sam was being barbecued by Satan, but I'm going to see him at Judgment Day. All the good people in heaven. But I'm going to see him at the resurrection. Wait a minute. He either dead or he in heaven. You either going to be judged or you've been judged already. Why you need a judgment day when you're going to send everybody where they want? Lord, take up old John. John been burning for about a couple of thousand years and wouldn't die. Worms eating on him. He get up and shake the ashes off him in the worms. Say, you know, John, look here. I might have misjudged you a little bit. Maybe you belong on the right side of the kingdom. John thinking this man, yeah. Give me the power. And I'm going to show you how much I appreciate it. I've been burning all this time. No. You got Judgment Day, you have the first resurrection, and you have the last resurrection. Nobody ever paid no attention to that. That's why I say it don't make sense. God makes sense. So now, he got to the point where this man insisted on sinning, so he had to come up with, add something to keep from killing him. And what did he add? The law of animal sacrifice. 4:1. Leviticus, the 4th chapter, and verse 1. Go ahead and read.
And the Lord spake unto Moses, saying, Speak unto the children of Israel, saying, If a soul shall sin through ignorance against any of the commandments of the Lord concerning things which ought not to be done, and shall do against any of them.
Now, always, he make a sin against people that intend to do it. But the ones that sin willfully, he told you about that in Hebrews, the 10th chapter. But go ahead and read.
If the priest that is anointed do sin according to the sin of the people, then let him bring for his sin, which he has sinned, a young bullock without blemish unto the Lord for a sin offering.
So the people are the priests. They got to do the same thing. And what they going to do with this young bullock for the sin offering? Go ahead.
And he shall bring the bullock unto the door of the tabernacle of the congregation before the Lord, and shall lay his hand upon the bullock's head, and kill the bullock before the Lord.
Now he's going to bring it before this tabernacle that the Lord wanted to dwell among. You're going to kill the bullock and do what? Go ahead and read.
And the priest that is anointed shall take of the bullock's blood and bring it to the tabernacle of the congregation.
Only the anointed priest, because any priest couldn't do this. You're going to take of the blood and bring it for the tabernacle of the congregation. Go ahead and read.
And the priest shall dip his finger in the blood and sprinkle of the blood 7 times before the Lord, before the veil of the sanctuary.
And he's going to dip his finger in the blood and sprinkle it 7 times before the Lord, before the veil in the tabernacle, sister and brother. That 7 times have a great significance. Did you finish that?
Yes.
Skip down then to verse 13. Let's look at the whole nation sin. What's going to happen? Verse 13. Go ahead.
And if the whole congregation of Israel sin through ignorance, and the thing be hid from the eyes of the assembly, and they have done somewhat against any of the commandments of the Lord, concerning things which should not be done, and are guilty, when the sin which they have sinned against it is known, then the congregation shall offer a young bullock for the sin, and bring him before the tabernacle of the congregation.
So when the whole nation sin, and unknowingly, when they find out that they have sinned, then they got to bring the bullock before the priest in the tabernacle. Go ahead and read.
And the elders of the congregation shall lay their hands upon the head of the bullock.
Only the elders. Those are the only ones that can do that. Like it was the elders that condemned Jesus, sister and brother. They're going to lay their hand upon the head of the bullock. Go ahead and read.
Before the Lord. And the bullock shall be killed before the Lord.
Go ahead.
And the priest that is anointed shall bring of the bullock's blood to the tabernacle of the congregation.
Now he going to bring the bullock's blood before the tabernacle of the congregation and do what with it?
And the priest shall dip his finger in some of the blood and sprinkle it 7 times before the Lord, even before the veil. So
now he going to dip his finger in the blood and sprinkle it 7 times before the Lord. Excuse me. Why 7 times? Because God gave man 7 days. Man sinned on the first day. That means that everybody, on every day, somebody needs some sin to be forgiven or covered by the blood. That's why 7, not 6, not 8. But if you hang around here, you're going to find out why those knots exist. 7 times. So once that's done, what is that supposed to do? Skip down to verse 20. Verse 20 and go ahead.
And you shall do with the bullock as he did with the bullock for a sin offering. So shall he do with this. And the priest shall make an atonement for them, and it shall be forgiven them. So that's what, when the priest went and sprinkled that blood, he's making atonement for you. Then that's when the Lord going to forgive your sin. But that couldn't give you life, sisters and brothers. I mean, eternal life. The Lord just did that to keep you unchecked until it was time. But that could not give you life, even though the priest was set up to go and deal with this. Why? Let's go into Hebrews, the 7th chapter, and show you that there was something missing here. Hebrews chapter 7. And we're going to read one verse, verse 11. Hebrews 7 and verse 11. Hebrews chapter 7 and verse 11. Because, sister and brother, I want you to read these things with your own eyes. See, people get mad sometimes. I ain't never coming back there. Why? You don't like to read the Bible? Well, then stop faking. Stop walking around with you. It's just like down there years ago on 35th Street when I used to get off the L before I retired. I was down there in this newspaper, the brother got killed. We used to be kicking the Bible all the time. I don't mean kicking with my foot. Just talking the book all the time. Then again, a guy come off the L, man, and had a book in his hand. I look at that book. It was all wrote and everything, man, and he going to say what's on his mind. I said, man, I see you do a lot of reading. Yeah. Well, it says in Genesis, this cat didn't even know what Genesis was. He done stole somebody's Bible. Well, you know you messed up when you steal a Bible. So I said that to say this, sisters and brothers, sometimes you can have something and it's not enough. So same thing with this, 7 and 11. Go ahead and read. If therefore perfection were by the Levitical priesthood.
That's the key right there. If though perfection was by the Levitical priesthood, it would have helped. But go ahead and read.
For under it the people received the law.
What law was that? Law of animal sacrifice. When God gave the commandments, you didn't have no Levitical priesthood. Go ahead and read.
What further need was there that another priest should rise after the order of Melchizedek? So, sisters and brothers, if this animal sacrifice that was administered by Aaron and the priesthood could bring about perfection, that means could get you back to immortality before we sin in the garden, there would not have been a need for another priesthood after the order of Melchizedek, which Jesus came. He was made a priest after the order of Melchizedek. There would not have been a need for him unless he was called after who? Read that. And not be called after the order of Aaron. And then not be called after the order of Aaron. But there was something wrong with that priesthood. It couldn't give you perfection. No matter how many laws you had under it, there was something wrong with it. Let's go into Galatians and see. Galatians the 3rd chapter. See, this is the Galatians the 3rd chapter. They read that to kill the commandments. But if you just read it, you know something is wrong here.
something don't fit. Galatians 3, and we're going to read one verse. Galatians 3, and we're going to read one verse. Verse 21. Go ahead.
Is the law then against the promises of God?
No, the law wasn't against the promise that God made with Abraham. But what about these laws? Something was missing. Go ahead and read.
God forbid.
Uh-huh.
For if there had been a law given which could have given life,
go ahead.
Verily, righteousness should have been by the law.
But if there had been a law which could have given life, it's talking about eternal life, then righteousness should have been by it. Otherwise, you had this law exist because you done broke another law. So this law here cannot give life. But then we're going to look at the other law, the royal law, and see if it came. Let's go into Romans, the 7th chapter. That's why I say if there had been a law that could give a life, then you wouldn't need another law. You wouldn't need another priesthood. You wouldn't have had to change nothing. You just kill animals right on into immortality. Didn't work like that.